Imagine yourself walking through a deep forest in the dead of the night, and all of a sudden you get attacked by a gang of thieves from nowhere, and all you have with you is a gun and a law book. What would you do? Would you shoot them all up, or would you start preaching sections of law to them? Well, I understand the first option requires certain amount of courage to execute. If not, you can go for the second option. But hey, here's the twist. You're walking in a lawless land, and out of here, a man settles his own problems. How can justice prevail without the intervention of violence in a world that doesn't recognize law? John Ford, one of the patriarchal figures of Hollywood cinema, dissects this very problem in this classic western, which is all about myths turning into facts and heroes turning into legends. If you think that Rocky and Pushpa are the only mass heroes you have ever seen, then you haven't met Tom Donovan. And if you think that Gabbar, Shakal, Mogambo, or even Garuda are the only mass villains you have ever met, you haven't met Liberty Valance. Hi folks, welcome to another video of All I Love is Cinema. The story of a simple, sleepy town of Shinbone whose peace is being frequently disrupted by the sound of guns breathing chaos on horsebacks, rode by hatted outlaws. The story of clash of ideals between a young lawyer and a vigilante for a man whose name births fear in the heart of the innocent townsfolk, told with the themes of love, friendship, loyalty, truth, power, and justice. When the legend becomes fact, print the legend. With this one line, John Ford didn't just complete a movie, he also redefined heroism, blending mass with class. He also showed the way how history needs to be told through a narrative that had both raw action and emotions. Welcome to a deep dive into one of the greatest westerns of all time, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. This isn't just a tale of guns and outlaws, it's also about myth-making, morality, and how societies choose their heroes. Starring James Stewart, John Wayne, Vera Miles, and Lee Marvin. John Ford, a name that is synonymous to anything that meant great cinema. A director who defined a whole genre, the genre of the Western, through his illustrious film career spanning almost 6 decades. The story starts when a train arrives at the Shinbone station and a couple gets down. Senator Ransom Stoddard and his wife Hallie have returned to their old abode after years to attend the funeral of a man named Tom Donovan. Now their arrival raises questions among the reporters of the Shinbone Star, a media firm operating locally. Why would an influential political figure like Ransom Stoddard care to meet someone like Tom Donovan, a lesser known man who have died at some dusty corner of the world? The curiosity unfolds into a story from the past, which takes us through the history of the place and its characters. Ransom Stoddard, an idealistic young law graduate who by the virtue of his degree believes that no one is above the law, that violence is not an answer to violence. Tom Donovan, a rancher and a vigilante who believes that only guns should be an answer to injustice and any acts of violence and not law books. Hallie, a young woman who works at the Peter Erickson Steakhouse and Tom's girlfriend. Liberty Valance, a ruthless outlaw who is dreaded by the townsfolk of Shinbone. He terrorizes people and frequently creates havoc in the lawless land. At the center of the story is a triangular conflict that occurs between the characters, a conflict that is being distributed among two different kinds of narratives, one of love and another an episode of action. Stoddard incidentally enters into the love equation that has Donovan and Hallie after he is being seriously injured in an attack by Valance. He is brought in by Donovan and nursed by Hallie to good health. In return, Stoddard teaches Hallie to read and write because Hallie didn't have any background of formal education. On the process, Hallie falls for Stoddard, leaving Donovan behind. Stoddard, who have already had a traumatic encounter with Valance, hears about him from Donovan and other townsfolk. Stoddard suggests that Valance should be dealt in with conscientiously by taking the help of law, to which Donovan rejects his argument, saying that here a man solves his own problems and no law is present to interfere. This gives rise to a clash of ideals between Stoddard and Donovan. However, Stoddard's view on violence and justice experiences a change at one point when his friend and the founder of the Shinbone Star, Mr. Dutton Peabody, is attacked by Valance. Eventually, Stoddard agrees to pick up the gun. Valance is shot dead one night as a nervous Stoddard points a gun at him. Stoddard becomes the hero who saved the people of Shinbon from Valance's terror. He becomes the people's leader that commences his political career, which lasts till the US Senate. He lives on as the legend, as the man who shot Liberty Valance, while Doniphan's name, who actually did shoot Valance from a shadowy corner, is lost in the shadows forever. This John Ford classic western was released in the year 1962. However, it is relevant even to this day, for the very reason that the storyline is hugely reminiscent of today's media culture, which is known for often distorting the truth in the public eye. Through the narrative of the village of Shinbon and the characters of Doniphan, Valance, and Stoddard, Ford not only tells us a story but also shows us how history can sometimes be built upon lies. A lie told loudly becomes the truth, and the truth that refuses to die becomes a legend. John Ford's characters have their own inner struggles. Stoddard, an idealistic man and who is known to oppose violence, eventually builds and illustrates political career on the foundations of violence. Years later, when he returns back to Shinbon, he is not only faced by the regret of losing an old friend, but also having made it big in life on someone else's victory, of having built a fame on a lie. Although shown as a massy hero at the beginning of the movie, Doniphan, who loses his love to Stoddard, goes through a mental turmoil. He dies a loser in the end, whom we sympathize with. Although the killing of Valance could have shown with more exaggerated suspense and twist, instead, Ford opts to treat it with more humanistic approach, allowing us to sympathize for Doniphan. The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance is not about big victories. Rather, it's about losses and sacrifices, along with the dark and unpleasant truth behind the creating of national identity. That's all for today, folks. I'll take your leave until we meet in the next video. Stay tuned. Thank you.